Does the Biden administration support the protesters in China?
Of course we do. We support the right of people everywhere, whether it's in China, whether it's Iran, whether it's any place else, to protest peacefully, to make known their views, to vent their frustrations. And as that's repressed in one way or another in any given country, we speak out against it, we stand up against it, and we take action against it. No American president is going to be silent on that.
Right. But they had been silent and they haven't done anything until asked. That was Secretary of State Anthony Blinken talking about China's COVID protests after the administration was criticized for a weak response to the protesters and the demonstrations. Of course, Apple reportedly accelerating now its plans to shift some of its production outside of China following the unrest at the Foxconn iPhone factory. Joining me right now is the Heritage Foundation president, Kevin Roberts. Kevin, there is so much to this story, and it just shows different levels of national security threats all around. Your thoughts on the administration's response to these protesters? We know that the CCP has stepped up its surveillance. They are tracking these people and going after them for being in the streets and pushing back on Xi Jinping's totalitarianism.
Well, Maria, it's a sad state of affairs and a tragedy that once again the United States of America is leading from behind. I remember a day, as I know you do, and probably most of your audience, when under the Reagan administration, President Reagan and his Secretary of State were always first to welcome the protests of people who want to be free, which, as you and I know, happens to be everyone in the world. And so it's very disappointing that Secretary Blinken only mustered the courage to give that milquetoast endorsement of the Chinese and Iranian protesters after a tremendous amount of pressure from the GOP. And to your point about all of the layers of this story, you wed that to the tragedy, the evil of Apple continuing to do business with the CCP. And it really does make the everyday American wonder, is this regime, our own administration, on our side? And is it really worth it as Americans in good conscience to continue to give Apple our own business?
Well, it's a great point, especially after they changed the function of the airdrop just weeks before the protesters broke out on the ground in China. These are all national security threats. This is why I keep going back to China and the CCP about, the censorship of information, because at the end of the day, this is a threat to the U.S.'s national security. Former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo joined me yesterday on Sunday Morning Futures, and he discussed the dangers that TikTok poses as well. Watch this.
TikTok should be banned. Not only are surveilling our kids, that's horrible, right? That they have they know what your child's face looks like, they know who their friends are, but it's also a propaganda tool here inside the United States. To watch President Biden talk about Twitter as if it's a risk and refuse to talk about TikTok, the Chinese Communist Party, that is demonstrably a risk, his own FBI has said so, is incomprehensible to me. We should ban it. We should ban all the Chinese apps, all the Chinese technologies here inside the United States. The Chinese Communist Party today is here. It's in America. It's inside the gates. We have to confront it, and we have to protect the American people from the threat it presents.
Kevin, can you imagine all of the attacks on Elon Musk and on Twitter? Not a word on TikTok from this administration. In fact, they're using TikTok. They used it throughout the campaign, heading into the midterm elections as well. Even in the face of the warnings about the risks around TikTok from the FBI.
It is, to use Mike Pompeo's great word, incomprehensible, Maria. You think about what TikTok, even if it weren't basically a tool of the Chinese Communist Party, does, especially to young kids, especially young girls, it would be bad enough, right? But the fact that they're using it to surveil everyday Americans means that it should not be a Democrat or Republican issue. The President of the United States would be welcomed with open arms by a majority of Americans if he stood up to the CCP, but he can't. And the reason he can't is because he's both feckless and he's also conflicted. And we applaud at the Heritage Foundation Secretary Pompeo's courage in saying this. It is past time for us to ban TikTok in this country.
Yeah, conflicted or compromised, however you want to say it, given all of the money that he and his family has taken in over the decades from communist China. Now, Elon Musk says that there are more smoking guns coming. After Friday's release of the Twitter internal communications on that censorship of the New York Post Hunter Biden laptop story ahead of the 2020 presidential election, Kevin. But what I found interesting from James Comer yesterday, who is going to be the chairman of the Oversight Commission is he said to me, let's not forget, this is all 2020 communications. Wait until we see the communications out of a sitting government in 2021 and 2022. They're still doing it. They're still telling social media what they should run and what they shouldn't run. This is a sitting administration. This is no longer campaign days. We'll see what Elon Musk releases about that. Your thoughts?
Well, my thoughts are we're living in an Orwellian America, right? That you, among all Americans, know from the heat that you took from exposing the nonsense of this practice during the so-called Russiagate scandal and others, that there is, at the very least, Maria, a double standard. And while it's interesting to see some of the commentary on Twitter over the weekend about how, quote unquote, much fun it is to watch this, this isn't fun. This is serious business. It goes to the heart of America's natural rights. And it is absurd, and it is a travesty that we have a regime in the Biden administration that continues not only to ignore this, but to have the ability to mock those of us who say that on behalf of the everyday American, we're going to stand up to them. So God bless Elon Musk for all of his warts and imperfections for bringing this to us, however late.
That's exactly right. And the point I keep making is on top of all of that, it is putting our country in danger. It is a national security threat. Kevin, it's great to get your take as always. Thanks very much for being here this morning. Kevin Roberts joining us this morning as we continue this deep dive into this enormous story. Quick break and then police see